My research study topic is acting on English B1 level writing process within the scope of academic integrity. Here is the outline. I will start with a brief introduction, then move to method, results, discussions, limitations, and further suggestions. Then I will conclude. In the introduction part, I'm going to mention academic integrity in higher education. Issues and practices in this context is growing within the scope of recent studies. And given the fact that academic integrity in higher education is closely interrelated with the writing process, there are numerous studies in different disciplines in terms of academic writing, also in second language context. The growing interest in this context not only stems from the reported academic misconduct cases, but there is an aim to promote academic honesty, ethical behavior, and policies. To this end, this study aims to add literature on academic integrity in English B1 level writing course, because while the studies in higher education with a lens of academic integrity and its promotions are growing in second language context, there is no study specifically focuses on informal writing in lower proficiency levels in English. So the study aims to set objectives beyond language proficiency, more towards full and efficient adherence to academic integrity by giving formative feedback and feed forward within the implementation of process writing. So when we look at the literature, there is need for holistic strategy in higher education to foster and support academic integrity culture. The main aim here is being preventive and taking proactive measures. And these proactive measures also equally need to be taken for early level novice writers, especially in second language context, because these novice writers may have a lack of understanding or background of what academic integrity or dishonesty is, and why academic malpractice is inappropriate, since these concerns may not have been addressed in in their high school. To some extent, students may not be sure what constitutes academic misbehavior, such as plagiarism, or where collaboration ends and collision and copying begin. And because novice EFL writers have made difficulties in producing text in a target language, they may apply to or involve in collusion, patch writing, or inappropriate source use, whether intentionally or not. And this may inflict their perception of academic honesty and paves the way for further transgressive acts. And so I mentioned proactive measures. What are they? Formative assessment, transparent instruction, systematic feedback, and assisting and guiding and tutoring students about the appropriate source use and the essentials of academic integrity can be taken into consideration. Formative assessment in writing covers mostly process writing, which is a recursive process, namely it is not one done thing, but there is always a return to revise and modify in multiple drafts. So the noteworthiness of a feedback to motivate students to write in these multiple drafts in order to become more engaged in this recursive process is also emphasized. So to make students aware of their standpoints and to build on their knowledge in writing, formative feedback can assist them while constructing their original texts. So in the cases where formative feedback needs to be extended to cater the students' needs, then feed forward can work as a preliminary assistance before students start work in their writing. So what I mean by proactive measure is to include process writing and assist it with feedback and feed forward. And there are some related studies. Highland, in her study with 2 learners, investigated teachers' written feedback when dealing with students' plagiarism. And she suggested considering options carefully when giving feedback or before giving feedback to students, and having a balance between attentive to students' concerns and providing valuable and clear feedback is very important. In line with that, Davis and Carroll studied individual tutoring and provided formative feedback on students' own work. The focus was on plagiarism avoidance. And according to their results, students' awareness of academic integrity appeared to increase as a result of the tutorial feedback, as evidenced by improved drafts. So in process writing, they tutored students with feedback and they had positive outcomes. Formative feed-forward, on the other hand, for reflective learning is being adopted and growing popularity in higher education. The aim is to produce alternative instructional methods, not only for conveying information as it is in traditional methods, but also for preventing academic dishonesty among students. So in academic writing, oral writing, process writing, formative feedback, and feed-forward are emphasized by other scholars. And the research questions of the study. The first one is process writing effective as a proactive measure to promote academic integrity in B1 level EFL writing assignments? And the second question, do students avoid academic misconduct after being provided formative feedback and feed forward in B1 level EFL writing assignments? This study adopted action research. The aim is to create academic integrity integrated B1 level writing skills in EFL class, because the problem arose as the incidence of academic misconduct in students' assignments. And this is a problem to be rectified. And so to act on this specific problem, this study is an action research with 5 stages of problem identification, planning, action, observing, and reflecting, as proposed by Noonan and Bailey. And participants, there were a total of 20 students enrolled in English B1 level preparatory class in the School of Foreign Languages at the State University, Turkey. They have 26-hour lecture a week throughout the term, and they have 4 hours for writing skills in a week, and every 2 weeks they submit writing assignments. And also they have a 30-minute long office hour where they can assist and they can ask for help, get guidance and tutoring in these office hours. Their native language is Turkish. Their proficiency level is B1 according to CFR. This is the cycle of the study. The problem was academic misconduct in the forms of collusion, patch writing, and inappropriate source use in B1 level English writing assignment of prep students. In the planning stage, process writing was integrated. Students were informed about the process, and they were provided with formative feedback and feed-forward cycles. The action covered formative feedback and feed-forward, including the essentials of academic integrity. And in observation stage, and writing assignments were analyzed by considering the existence of transgressive acts, and the findings were reflected. So the problem, as I mentioned, academic misconduct. The first incidents of academic misconduct were observed in the fall semester. Students were asked to submit their writing assignments only every 2 weeks as a course requirement. In the first weeks, there were 2 highly identical papers for the second assignment, 1 extended patch writing from a web source, and 2 other papers, again including patch writing. And for the third assignment, again, there were 2 moderate identical papers. These were the same students. and 2 papers, again, including patch writing from web sources. And in the planning stage, after encountered such a problem, an action research was designed, and the planning stage is devoted to determine the duration and process. The objectives were set to guide students about process writing because they were they were submitting their assignments as product one. Just there was just final draft, but within the objectives of this action research, the students were trained about process writing. The instructions about the assignments were replanned and improved to be more comprehensive and transparent. And students were informed about the cycle of process writing, feedback, and feed-forward procedure. In the action stage, the clear instructions about the necessities of assignments were provided. There were conversations about academic integrity and what constitutes academic misconduct. The importance of appropriate sources with good practice was emphasized. The difference between collaboration and collision was stressed, and some good practice examples from multiple sources, but mostly from Owen's library, were provided to students to raise their awareness about academic integrity. So this is the procedure. It started in week 7 by changing the instructions and explaining academic integrity, and they got their first formative feed forward. And then the cycle here, as you can see, in week 8, formative feedback for both drafts. In week 9, formative feed forward for the next task and citational practices. Formative feedback for the both drafts in week 10 and 11. And again, in week 12, there were formative feed forward for the next tasks and examples of outsourcing. And again, there were formative feedback sessions, both online and face-to-face, both oral and written, in week 13. And data collection. Data were collected through students' assignments for 3 writing tasks, including their first and final drafts. And the number of the participants were 20. However, some students didn't submit their first drafts, although they all submitted their final drafts. So there were a total of 54 first drafts and 60 final drafts delivered to instructor. And they were, in data analysis, they were analyzed thoroughly. However, although there are qualified text matching tools at the sphere of academic integrity to detect malpractices or plagiarism in students' assignments, the collected data wasn't uploaded into any text matching tool because of the limited access to such programs within the institution. Therefore, the detection was mostly performed on searching Google by copy-pasting students' assignments to identify possible patch writing. On the other hand, identifying collusion was rather easier because of the number of the students. There were just 20 students. So it was easier to see or spot the collusion or copied texts. In end results, after taking proactive measures to prevent academic misconduct, no incidents for collusion and patch writing observed. However, although there is a decline in plagiarism, inappropriate citation sources, and referencing in the papers throughout the weeks, there were still some issues to be addressed for the inappropriate citation and referencing. And while students' attempts at citation within the text were inaccurate or incomplete, there were clear differences between the first and final drafts in terms of instance of improper or incomplete citation. So this is the week 7 and assignment 4. Although there is a paper with page writing. In the followings, there were no incidents of page writing or collusion. However, inappropriate citation source use and referencing followed in the further weeks, as you can see, like in week 9, 11, and 13. And here is the discussion part. The aim of this study was twofold. First, to understand the effect of formative assessment, which is process writing in promoting academic integrity. Second, to discover whether the students avoid academic misconduct after being provided formative feedback and feed forward in writing assignments. So in line with Davis and Carroll's study, the findings of this research reveal that students' understanding of academic integrity appeared to increase as evidenced by improved drafts. So engaging students in process writing enabled them to plan their text after getting feed-forward and feedback for their final drafts. Accordingly, the number of malpractice incidents reduced to a certain extent. The study's findings also support prior research findings that providing feedback and feed-forward about avoiding academic misconduct through tutorials, examples, and activities is beneficial in reducing students' malpractices. On the other hand, the average number of plagiarism cases decreased, indicated that students had a better knowledge of how to correctly cite sources in their final drafts. But there were some issues to be addressed, though, because it's not an easy process to totally teach students how to outsource. So this is the limitation and further suggestions. The research, however, is subject to several limitations. First, this was a preliminary study as the first cycle of an action research, as the nature of action research requires cyclic actions and planning. So collected data and triangulation were also limited. So in the second cycle, it can be carried out by including an observer for an external audit trial and a second researcher to assess the assignments in peer evaluation. So again, the action research requires to be collaborative. So a second researcher or observer may help to triangulation. It should also be noted that the study is limited in its context with a small sample size, which makes the results not necessarily generalizable. On the other hand, though it would be feasible to apply a text matching tool, the researcher just carried out the detection of the malpractices on Google because there was no chance to access such a tool. And to conclude, this study is parallel with previous studies. It suggests the necessity of formative assessment, transparent instructions, systematic feedback, and assisting students and tutoring them about appropriate sources, and avoiding malpractices to promote the culture of academic integrity by taking mentioned proactive measures. And even if concerns about academic integrity are more prevalent in academic writing, students in early level writing, especially in second language, should be given equal attention with an emphasis on the necessity of a holistic perspective for academic honesty. Therefore, if it is about promoting academic integrity, then there is a need for a head start for LTU novice writers to familiarize more with academic integrity, its principles, its essentials from the beginning of the writing process, so that students who advance to who move to the next level then can be presumed to be knowledgeable and competent on that account. And there were the references, and thank you for listening.